Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of Grace Found Me. I'm Brian. I'm excited that you're tuning into this podcast. This is a space where we will be sharing stories, diving into deep conversations, and exploring what faith looks like in everyday life. And to start things off, I'm here with the lead pastor of Grace International, Brent, and his wife, Renee, who have followed God's call all the way from the US to Malta. Tell us about where you come from and what your early life was like.
Well, I grew up in central Wisconsin, that's in the Midwest, and grew up off kind of in the country in a small town, about 5,000 people. My dad ran youth camps and worked with multiple churches with their youth ministries and things like that. And so I grew up running around, getting in trouble, not having my parents know where I was 95% of the day, on a campground off in the woods and doing that kind of stuff, and fishing, hunting, those kinds of things. That's how I grew up. But it was a Christian home, and we were in church on a regular basis, and we just really enjoyed life, but always kind of wove our belief in God and Christianity into what we did. And it wasn't a weird thing. It was just kind of life. Played a lot of sports, had brothers and sisters, 2 brothers and a sister, and we just, had fun, made memories, got in trouble together. I mean, all those things kids do, and it was great. That's how I grew up, so, yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in the U.S., in the same state in Wisconsin, like 2 hours away. Never knew Brent before. We started dating later in life. But, small town, a lot of woods, a lot of green. So living on a rock is a little different, but yeah, I mean, a very small town in a Christian home, so it was a pretty quiet childhood.
So it seems like both of you grew up in a Christian environment. When did your personal journey with God begin?
I was younger, probably like 6 to 8 or somewhere in there. I was invited to a vacation Bible school. It's a outreach for kids, and where they do puppets and a lot of fun stuff. And so it was during that week that I decided to give my heart to the Lord, ask him in my heart. And honestly, besides a few moments here and there along the way, that was the start of my journey, and it's been that way the whole time. So, yeah. How about you? When did you first?
Growing up with a pastor as a dad, you kind of always knew what was going on and stuff. But I would say probably I made a decision on my own on which direction I was going to take and what kind of path I was going to have for my life when I was probably in middle school, really, and I was at camp. One of those days you just get done goofing off and you're having fun and swimming and all that other stuff, and you get done at the end of the day and you just kind of listen to the message and the story at the end of the day that they always told. There was like a service at the end of the day. And,
Sorry to stop you. So when you say middle school, for the people who don't understand the U.S. education system?
Like 12.
All right.
I could explain everything to you before then, but it was never really mine. Does that make sense? Like there's those things where like you can answer all the questions, but you don't really know it yourself. You haven't really decided. So it's probably like 12, 10 years old, something in that range. I just decided, this is something that I actually believe in, and went forward and talked to some people and made a decision. And then from there, it just became kind of just part of my life. Like it wasn't this weird shift. It wasn't like my day changed. It just became part of how I decided to live my life, was doing the things that the Bible taught. And that just really changed the course and the direction of where I went. So that's kind of how it happened for me. It was just kind of learning more, knowing more, and then deciding to fully commit to the teachings of Christ is really what it is.
It seems like both of you started off at a young age, since you both had Christian families. And it grew over time, as I imagine. Yeah. So at what point then did you realize that you were being called into ministry?
For me, with my dad being a pastor, it was just kind of always something I was open to, I guess I would say. For me, it wasn't like this epiphany, massive moment. And I think that's where a lot of people get it confused a little, is they think that there's like this light from the sky or an angel comes and visits you in your bedroom, and that just wasn't it. It was just more of kind of a, hey, this is something maybe I could do. So the Bible tells us to just test things and try it. So for me, I was actually I had a youth pastor when I was probably 15, 16. And he just gave me the opportunity to get involved. It wasn't a paid position. It wasn't a job. He just looked at me one day and he goes, hey, we've got some small groups. And there's a group of about, 12 or 13 of the kids your age that I was all friends with. And he said, would you mind leading a small group with just some questions? And so it was like 5 questions a week that he'd give me like the day before. And
right.
I would do this with an adult in the small group with us and whatever. And after doing that for a little while, it just became something I enjoyed. It became something that I felt like I had a quote unquote calling to do, like, because it just became natural to me. And then after that, in the 90s, there was a lot of Bible clubs in America, which was a club that you would start in your school. Okay. So I went to a public school, and me and a friend were like, after having conversations with our classmates and kids in our youth group and youth ministries and whatever, we were like, it'd be kind of nice to have something where we could all sign up and get together at school and have activities or whatever. So me and this friend of mine, we started a club in our school that was totally voluntary. It was at a time when there wasn't class, so we weren't skipping anything, whatever. And me and a friend led it, and it ended up getting to about 200 kids. So it was kind of crazy that at 15 years old, you're leading a group with 200 kids in it, and it just that kind of grew into looking into going to university for it, and then kind of testing it on a bigger scale, and then getting to actually speak a couple times at the youth group as I got older, like right before college type stuff. And so that's more kind of my process of getting into ministry. Is it wasn't like this major moment. And I credit my dad a lot, because even though he was a minister, he never pushed any of us into it. He never cared what we did. So I could have gone into science if I had the grades. I could have gone into science. I could have gone into politics. I could have gone and been a welder. I mean, he didn't care. So for us, it really was a choice we had, which, for me, I'll just add this in. Both of my brothers are also ministers.
All right.
My sister's a Christian counselor that works with married couples that are struggling. So all of us kind of chose a different path a little bit, but all of us voluntarily chose it on our own, even to the point that my dad actually sat in a few different interviews with the military. I thought that was going to go in that direction, and there was never pressure to not do that. He just kind of sat in them to help us kind of figure out our own path. And I think that's the thing too, is just to kind of, let God open doors, because there's no wrong path if you're doing what God asks. So that's kind of how I did it. So.
And how about you, Renee? What was your calling? What made you say yes to your calling?
I never saw myself being in ministry, but I knew I wanted to be a missionary, which is the same thing. You're still doing ministry, but when you're younger, a missionary is just someone that lives overseas sometimes in your mind, So I wanted to have a business degree. And so I worked on that, but I also did some schooling to do ministry, just to kind of see what it was about, because I never had an opportunity to take a mission trip or work with youth like you did.
Yeah.
And so, I did do that just to kind of see what I wanted to do.
And at any point, were there any moments of hesitation or fear or doubts of what you're going to go into? And
no, honestly.
I think I had some. Okay. There were moments I think I did. I think it's normal, but I think it was more the idea, in the context that I'm from. I grew up in a really little town, like I said, of 5,000 people. Yours was maybe twice that size, 10,000 maybe.
Anyways,
it was more the move to a bigger city, because I went from a town of 5,000 to a school that had 3,000. So So I think that was my hesitation, was more of just the understanding that I had to go make these changes, and then just leaving home made me nervous, I think, a little bit. I mean, there was some excitement, but there was the nervousness. And, then I think for us too, part of what got us kind of shifting a little bit from just ministry into missions more was, we both lived overseas for 2 years. So I think those would have been my moments of hesitation, were those shifts. Never fear of doing the job, but the shifts in what the training looked like was what kind of made me nervous at times. Did that ever make you nervous, or were you just like, hey, let's do this?
No, I knew what I wanted to do. So
Okay.
Yeah,
Good
and you
question.
said that you've lived abroad for 2 years, and is that where you guys met? Remind me, or
We both,
we both met in a first year of a college for you.
all right. So you did meet in the U.S.
We
before
met in the
you-
U.S. and then we found out that the program we were a part of, they were going to start one in Europe, actually in Denmark, and so we both went over and we were there for 2 years. So yeah.
So that's where, like, when I talk about that nervousness, was you weren't coming back in 2 weeks. Like, you moved. So I think
Yeah.
that's where, like, you got this shift. I mean, it was cool.
It's kind of like the hesitation of not knowing what's gonna happen in the future.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that was more it than the training itself. But there was also this excitement that drove you more.
Yeah, and that's
than
totally understandable.
The worry, because you're like, I actually get to live in Europe for 2 years, which, you know, from where we live and grew up, that wasn't a normal thing. You didn't look at friends and be like, hey, I'm going to go live in Europe for 2 years. Like, that was not the discussion ever. So I think just even having that on my radar kind of made you nervous. But once you get on the airplane, you're ready to go. So yeah.
Yeah, so you've served in different countries before coming to Malta. As far as I think you've been to, you mentioned Denmark, and
Denmark in school.
All right.
And then we were in
And-
Romania.
And they were in Romania for 3 years.
Yeah.
She does better on the math than I do. So, for 3 years, and then Malta. And so it just kind of got you ready for the European mentality idea, you know, because we'd been around Europe. Because even when we were serving in those two areas, we traveled Europe a lot. We went to quite a few countries. So you kind of had an idea, and it just became more natural then. So.
And what led you to make that step, like to move to Europe? Was there like a defining moment? Was it just something that you did on a whim, or that you thought about, spoke with family? Or?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be a missionary when I was younger. And so when we would have, in the U.S., we'd have missionaries come to our church and talk about their experience and where they served. And so we would always, for some reason, had a lot of single ladies that served in Africa. So I really thought I'd end up in Africa. And then when I was in college, the ministry school I went to, I had an opportunity to go to Amsterdam for a short-term 2-week mission trip. And so it was while I was there that I was like, okay, Europe is really cool, for one. And two, they need Jesus just as much over here. And so that was like my time when I knew that, like, okay, Europe was where I was going to be. But that wasn't the same for you.
No, for me, the Amsterdam trip was just fun. I was like, cool, this is fun. I was on that trip. But for me, when it happened for me, because I was very much U.S. based. I was like, I like ministry, I like traveling, but I don't want to live there. Almost to the point of like, this isn't allowed in my life. Like, I'll go back and forth, I'll go on a trip, but I'm not living in Europe. I'm not living in Africa. I like America. That's where I'm going to be. And we actually went on a missions trip in Romania, actually. And that's where it changed for me. And I'm very skeptical as naturally. I'm just very much, you know, people walk up and they say they're going to do something and they don't, or and it's not to say they don't believe them. You just kind of go, okay, we'll see if it happens, kind of a thing. Yeah. So this might surprise you to hear this from a pastor. I'm kind of that way even with God at times. Like, you're like, okay, God, prove this to me. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see you, show me. So I actually, I don't know if this is biblical or not, but I gave God an ultimatum. And I was like, you know, if this is something you want to do, you're going to have to make it obvious, because I'm not just going to do this. And what made it a little more complicated for us is that we started showing interest. And one of her things was that she was called to be a missionary. And she was like, you know, I'm not going to even waste my time unless I know that my husband's on the same track I am. And I took that seriously. I didn't want to fake it. I mean, because I've heard of guys just saying that so they get married or whatever, and I didn't want to do that. So that was kind of all there, of the skepticism and the ultimatum.
So in
I don't know if that's
Romania,
word.
then, while we're there.
And then when we were in Romania, I actually had 3 different people walk up to me at 3 different times. We were there for like 2 or 3 weeks. Okay. And these people didn't even know each other. And all three of them at different times said, I don't know why I'm supposed to tell you this, but you're supposed to come back to Romania. And it just kind of caught me that I'm like, okay, like this isn't normal. You know what I mean? You don't normally have three different people say the same sentence in different towns. So I kind of was like, all right, God, you got my attention, but I need you to prove this. Like, I'm not just going to go on the word of somebody. And so I began to pray about it. And a few weeks later, God just literally woke me up at night, and I just felt I was supposed to open my Bible, and I did. And it fell open to Genesis 12:1, which says, Abram, leave your land, your people, and your father's household, and go to a land that I will show you. And for me, that was the moment I'm like, okay, God. But once, I think for me personally, once that skepticism is resolved, once you kind of have those answers, I'm all in. And from then until now, I've just known that it's missions. So that's why our first three and a half years was in Romania, and it just, it didn't work out there. But then, you know, we got asked to come to Malta and help here, and it just was a fit for our family, for us, and so that's kind of how it happened for me. So,
and in
long answer, but hey,
yeah, it's okay. And in these beginning times of your mission, of your missionary journey, so to say, were there some challenges that, you know, some challenging moments that made you maybe doubt if this is what you're actually being called to do?
No, I don't think I've questioned what we're supposed to do in missions. We've had challenges where, you know, our first time we went to Romania, when we decided to move full time, like my son was 3 months old. And so being a new mom, all of a sudden you're like, okay, before this was different because this was just going to be Brent and I, and now I've got this little person that I've got to decide how to take care of overseas. You know, so you had different not roadblocks, like different situations like that, I think, where you just, you know, different hurdles in life that you just come up to and go, okay, do I want to do this overseas? It would be better in America, you know, because that's where you're comfortable with. But when God told us that this is what we're supposed to do, it kind of gives you, there's something when you're working in your gifting and your calling, you know, that just makes you be able to handle any hard situation and go, you know what, even though it's hard, this is where I'm supposed to be, you know, for me.
Yeah. I think the hardest stuff for me on the husband side is really just the side of just taking care of your family, which I think everyone experiences. It's just you're doing it in a culture that's not your own. Agreed? Right. It'd be like being a mom. I mean, it's the same thing. It's just you're doing it in a culture that's not, you know, if your kid gets sick, it's a hospital. You can't always talk to all the doctors, or you can't. So it's more that, and I think it was the fundraising side. I mean, I'm okay at it, but I don't like it. I'd rather go get a job and earn my wage. And, you know, there's times I joke and say I feel like I'm the best dressed beggar. And I don't mean that rude. It's just, it's like you wish you could just go weld something or plant something or build something or make something and get paid for it. It's a different setup. So I think that's where some of the struggles came in, I would say. Would you agree?
Sure.
That's kind of where it's more of shifting that from doing a job and getting paid to trying to market yourself. It became a bigger thing then. So yeah, those were the struggles I had, I think.
Oh, awesome. So before moving on to your experiences here in Malta, if there is someone that is currently thinking about going into missions, what would you tell them? Was there something that you would specifically tell them, like some advice or?
Well, first and foremost, before missions, I think everybody in their life should experience traveling and putting yourself in a situation that is completely different from what you've grown up in. You know, be involved in some kind of NGO or compassion thing, something that you can go help with and go serve somewhere, because it just gets you to understand how privileged you are in the area that you live, I think, for one. Two, people for missions, I'd say, test it out. Once again, go on these trips and see what it feels like to be away from home and to help people. And when that happens, you know, that you'll see if God's saying, okay, this is something that, you know, you should make part of your life or not.
And I think it adds to the side too, where you're out of your element. You know what I mean? It's one thing to sit in your home church, whether that's a European church or an American church or where. It's one thing to sit in your home church and go, yeah, I'm going to go do this. Because you still go home after church and at lunch and go to your own dinner. And it's a whole different world when you go on even a short-term trip and you're eating food you're not used to, and you're for us, driving on the other side of the road. And I mean,
even cultural differences.
Yeah. What it is those short-term trips, if you can go on them, it's not life-altering. It's 2 weeks. So do a couple of those. See how you react. See what those are like. And the other thing that's nice about it, I look at it, is you're around someone who lives there. So you're around someone as a missionary normally that is outside of their element. So you can sit with them at lunch and talk to them and go, what is it like? Raising your kids here, having, just those questions that you kind of have in the back of your mind as you're wondering if this is what you want God to have you do. And I think that's what helped us, is that we got around veterans that had gone ahead of us and asked a lot of questions and spent some time with them. We didn't move there yet, but you just kind of were like, okay, let's take a week. Let's go see what it's like with them. And that's what I would recommend. Try those things and then keep those people that you went with in your life, because as you go through the process of applying and everything, they've already done it. So they help you understand
figure
it.
things out, getting started.
And your worries and fears, they kind of go, it's okay. We've all had them. We all experience it. So I would even say that, if you're watching this and you have that type of a question and you want to send a WhatsApp or an email or whatever and you have questions, just talk to us. I mean, nothing's a secret. It's just something you don't know yet. So, so that's what I would say. Just ask the questions, even if you think they're crazy, because everyone has them anyways. You may as well just say them, So, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about Malta. We're here now a couple of years into your mission. How did this particular mission start for you guys?
Well, we were actually in Romania and trying to get things going over there, and ministry just wasn't coming together like we thought it would. And so our leadership that we were with at the time, they said, why don't you start praying and thinking if there's somewhere else you'd like to go? Or you could stay in Romania if you want. It's up to you. Let's just start keep opening that door. And so we just started praying and knew we wanted to stay in Europe, but we didn't know where. Literally, we took the globe and you're spinning it and going, closing your eyes and putting your finger on it and be like,
that's
Africa.
We're
in the water. Okay. We just weren't feeling a specific place. But then as we kept praying, we just felt like, okay, we had a meeting coming up with our leadership and we were like, they're going to have a country and we're just going to say yes. We just be faithful and trust your leaders. And so we met with our leadership and he's like, guys, I have a place. The evangelical church hasn't always been, is very young there. And there's a pastor that's just looking for some help. Would you be willing to go? And so we said, yeah. And he's like, do you want to know where it is? And we're like, sure. And he's like, I'd like you to go to the country of Malta. And both Brent and I said, okay. And he's like, do you know where Malta is? And we're like, we've never heard of Malta.
Had never heard, literally never. We were like, when we were saying yes, I'm pretty sure you were packing parkas and
I thought we were going to Siberia. So he said, our leader said, can you Google that for me while you're talking to me? So we Googled it and we're like, oh, it's a sunny island. Because living in Romania, we were in Bucharest, and so there's still a lot of communist blocs, or at least at the time, so things are kind of gray. Right. And so when you find out you're going to move somewhere with 300 days of sun, that's a little exciting. So yeah, that
never
was
more than 10 miles from the beach. That wasn't bad either. So.
Yeah, so that was our first experience with even hearing about Malta. So.
And so what were your first impressions when you arrived on the island?
It's really full. There's a lot of people. I think that was my first impression. And I don't mean that rude to anyone out there. But again, I got to go back to where we grew up. I mean, I grew up in a place where I had more wild animals than I had people. So to get off the plane and go, okay, I'm never going to be further than 10 feet from another human being for the rest of my time. So that was a shift. I think the driving.
Yeah, the driving. And just, I thought it might have been more like Italian, I thought. But Malta's just different. You've got a little bit of different cultures mixed here. It's just very unique,
I love it.
Yeah.
It's just, I think those are the things that hit me is and then for me, the temperature. I
you
knew there.
like
I
cold
knew there was
weather.
summer, but I didn't know there was summer. Like, you know, there's like hot, and then there's like my skin's coming off. So I joke that I'm actually part polar bear. So with me growing up in northern North America, in the summers I spend my time in two places, in the water up to my neck or in front of an air conditioner. But those were the shifts for us, but none of them are negative. It's just, and I think anyone who's ever visited or lives in Malta would agree with those. It's hot and there's a lot of people. And that's kind of what it is. I mean, but it's fun.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah.
So, how did your vision of planting a church become a reality here?
We had been working with another church and just seeing it was a Maltese church. And so we just kind of saw how internationals were being welcomed in the church or not. And we just started praying and being like, you know what, we just have this heart. We have a heart to reach the Maltese people, but we also have a heart for the internationals that are here. And so as we were serving in this church, just trying to help it, it was like, you know what, I think after our time, I really would love to plant an international church, a place where internationals can come and just feel at home, build a community. Because I just felt like at the Maltese church, it wasn't a negative, but like the Maltese didn't understand what it was like to leave home. You know, all your family's like right here, like all the extended family. Like when my kids were in school here, like, you know, you get tickets with only having 2 extra people come to a school assembly because everybody's here. You know, like growing up,
Right.
that's for us, like anybody can come because more than likely your family like lives a ways away. So you're not going to have a lot of people come.
Right.
So I think that's what opened our eyes to the need of an international church, I think.
Well, I think yes, but I think it's more than that too. Because because let's just look at normal life, okay? The Maltese community of the Maltese people, they're very family oriented, which is a positive.
Yeah.
I don't mean that as a negative.
Yeah.
But when you come here as an expat and you have those national holiday moments, so you have Easter, you have Christmas, you have New Year's, you have birthdays, okay? A lot of the Maltese miss the opportunity to include a foreigner because when you have a foreigner whose birthday it is, you're not getting invited to your family's house. They're in another country in Europe or the other side of the globe. It's just not there. When you have your normal holidays, whether they're Christian holidays or national holidays or whatever, there's this draw in this culture to do it with who you've always done it with. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
But that's not a negative. It's just so when we saw that, even working at the previous church we were at, it kind of drew us to the international community because what we ended up doing, because it was a Maltese church, is that we would invite people to our house that were foreigners. We would invite people to our house for their birthdays or for these different events. And that's what it kind of grew out of, was there's a different need there. It's not wrong with what anyone does. You just saw a need, and that's why even our theme for our church is welcome home. Is we just want you to feel like you have a place that you can call home, whether you're Italian, American, German, Swedish, Norwegian, whatever. You've got that nucleus that kind of becomes your family because none of us on the island that are expats really have it. I mean, you can call on the phone, whatever, but we've noticed that in our church, it's become a family. I think you've experienced that. You know what I mean? You're getting those WhatsApp messages on your birthday, or you're getting those, you know, when you get a promotion at work or whatever. There's a community that acknowledges that's happening, and then we really try to fill that void at those major moments in the year, where if you don't have someone to be with, there's always someone. So that's kind of what it came out of.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's really interesting, yeah. And so what were the initial challenges that you faced? And do you think that since you've first come here, the community has changed over time?
I think the demographics have changed. You had a
Yeah.
lot of the British that left, and you're getting more of the Asian, South American markets. I mean, a business term to use. But, I mean, like you had a lot of that shift, but the needs don't change.
Right.
It's just what it is. And so that's where a lot of your Northern Europeans maybe were here before, but we still have a good number of them too. But I just mean I think that's the shift more than the need. But it's...
Yeah. But just for starting our church, though, for challenges, though, I think of just because this was the first time we've done this, the challenge itself was just stepping into the unknown of doing this. You know,
I can imagine.
We called a lot of friends that had planted churches and we're like, what did you do? And there's like, there's no secret recipe or instructions, you know. You just kind of have to step out and do it. And so that's what we did.
And how would you do that? We just did that in our living room first, right?
Yeah.
It literally was, and everyone always asks, how'd you get a building? How'd you get this? How'd you do that? How'd you do it? It just was a natural progression. It's almost like, how do you raise a baby? Well, you start by taking it home from the hospital. I mean, like, and it sounds crazy, but that's kind of what it was, is you just kind of go, okay, let's start. And all of a sudden, people started inviting friends, and our living room was too little. So you went to a meeting hall that we rented, and then you get done in the meeting hall, and our theme at the beginning was "Come sweat with us."
Because we didn't have air conditioning.
We didn't have air conditioning, but going back to that temperature thing. And then one of the members of our church donated some air conditioning, and it started to change the temperature some. And I mean, it's just kind of a natural thing that has happened, because when you try to do it like anyone else, I think that's when you fail. Again, like parenting. Yeah, I mean, every kid is different. I mean, we have 2 children. We don't parent them the same. So if I would have brought my son home and 2 years later brought my daughter home and did the same thing, it wouldn't have worked. So you just kind of, I think the advice I have for anyone planting a church is kind of like Nike, just do it. How? Just do it. I don't know how. I'll pray with you, and and I think that's what makes it fun, is because the things you learn along the way. It's not a program. It's just doing what's next and what's natural, Yeah.
So staying on this topic, what do you think makes this church unique then, apart from the stuff that you've already mentioned, that it's more for internationals? Or
I think, now I'm the pastor, so I may have a different opinion.
You may be a bit biased, to be honest.
Maybe. But what we really try to do is we just try to make it more like coming to my living room than coming to a church.
Do you have couches in there?
I wish.
Maybe in the future.
Only because I'm on the 3rd floor and I can't haul them up there right now. But no, really, this goes back to Maltese culture for a second, okay? Really European culture, okay? Is when you get to someone's home, what's the first thing you're going to ask me, Brian?
You want something to drink?
You're right. You want a coffee? You want a tea? You want whatever. So we just kind of approach church that way. There's always free coffee. There's always free donuts. There's always free tea. And we just kind of pull that from the culture, is just be relaxed. And we get that from the idea of Jesus, even with the disciples. I mean, there's one part in Scripture where it says that one of the disciples had his head on Jesus' lap at the Last Supper. I mean, Jesus was relaxed. Jesus had these relationships and these friendships for years. So instead of making it this barrier for people, or this, you have to be good enough or dress good enough or act right, or I don't see any place in Scripture where Jesus started that with someone with questions.
Okay.
He was more relaxed. He answered their questions. He didn't judge them. He loved them. And that's kind of what makes it different with us, is it's a place that you can ask questions. It's a place that if you don't understand, there's no judgment. If you don't agree, there's no judgment. Just come see what it is. And I tell people all the time, we hand out free coffee. There's paper cups. And I say, listen, if you need to go refill while I'm preaching, go. It's okay. And they do. Okay. Obviously we try to be polite, but and I think that's what makes it different, is you just kind of take the tension down and just make it more about what Jesus taught.
And we like to keep it welcoming. Like, I want people to know that we know your name. We're glad you're there, because I've been in a lot of churches all over the world where you can walk in and nobody really says hi. You feel like a stranger, and like we said, we want this to be a community. So we want people to be able to be like, oh, you missed me this week. We are glad you're here. We're glad you're a part. And so, I'm huge on that,
And as it grows, that's why we want small groups. Yeah. Because then even if all the staff doesn't know you, there's a group of women, or there's a worship team, or there's an outreach team, or something that you're a part of that's still checking in on you. So as it gets bigger, what I was taught was as you get bigger, make it smaller.
Okay.
So even though your church as a body gets bigger, you make more small groups to force it smaller, so that at least that small group you're in knows your name. And when we do that, it allows people to stay relaxed and know someone. So when they walk into a room, there's someone to sit next to. There's someone that says hi. There's someone that
There's always a friendly
there's
face.
Always a friendly face, and that's what we really work towards. Is try to just really what it comes down to is be like Jesus. He didn't push anyone away. So.
So imagine I've never come to church. So
Yeah.
would you explain to me what a typical Sunday would look like for starting off for you and for anyone coming to church?
So I can say
to
this
Grace?
right now, and I'm just saying this. We have a very sweet gentleman named Ray, who's Maltese, who will welcome you at our door. And we love Ray because he always has the biggest smile. But anyways, you come to church and you have to haul up those 3 level of stairs right now. Once you get to the top, we all cheer you on and welcome you and go, you arrived.
Doing
And
a
if you
bit
need-
of cardio.
and if you
around
need
going
help-
to church, you know?
If you need help, we will help you up the stairs.
Exactly.
Truthfully, I'm not even kidding. Like it's
But yeah, we just welcome you right away and offer you a coffee, offer you some donuts, hang out for a little bit, and then
a
church
chair to
starts.
sit down in when you get there.
A chair to sit down if you need to catch your breath. Because some days, no matter how many times you do it, you still get overtaken by the stairs. Oh yeah, but then no, we have church for about an hour,
About an hour.
hour and a half. It's about an
Yeah.
hour and a half, and we just have 3 or 4 songs and some preaching, and
it's
yeah.
not always me. I preach most of the time, but we try. I'm a pastor, so you got to give me grace. Sometimes I go longer than I want
Sometimes you do go longer.
to. But we try to keep it between 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you have 4 or 5 songs, 30 to 40 minute message, and then announcements and.
Hang out.
I'll just be honest. We do take an offering, but it's free will. We're not there to make money. You don't have to give a dime, a euro, or whatever you want to call it. You have to give anything. It doesn't change what you get. And then we close, and most of our people are discussing whose car to get in and where they're meeting for lunch and what's going on. And that's just kind of how it goes. Because again, it becomes a family. So you're not just walking out right away. I think you've even done that. Oh, us 4 are going to lunch, or us
Yeah.
4, and it just kind of becomes a community that then for the rest of the day we'll hear that people, went to one of the festivals for the rest of the day, and it's just kind of a place to meet up, all come together, take time to love on each other and
Follow
meet with
Jesus.
God, and then go on with your day together. So
Nice. I think ministry is beautiful, but it's not always easy. So let's talk about the spiritual and personal challenges that there are over there. Have you ever faced any, like burnout or spiritual dryness while doing this? Is there?
Burnout, I'd say no, because we really try to protect ourselves. We've been around people that have been burned out, and it just shuts them down. And so we really try to protect that area of our lives. But I'd say yes, like any Christian, you go through seasons of dryness.
yeah,
And it's at those times when you need to just kind of stay the course, keep reading your Bible, keep, turning off social media, turning on some worship music, and just going, okay, God, I'm going to try to run after you no matter what. There's some times in your spiritual walk that you can just run and it's like, this is awesome. But like a marathon, there's some times you're like, am I going to make it?
You need to catch your breath.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
Yeah.
how about you, Brent?
I don't think I think we had some transitions in ministry would have been the closest, but that wasn't a burnout. That was more of just frustrations that we all go through.
Okay,
Like
what do you
right,
mean
right,
by that?
right now we're studying a series with David, and
Okay.
it talked about how David had to run from Saul, and he
Yeah.
had to live in a cave, and he had to, he had struggles, right? But God, at the end of the day, at the end of his life, said he's a man after my own heart. It's not ever a burnout, but there's times in life where we just like to say life happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Kinda, you have to pull back a bit and
Yeah.
catch your breath, kind of.
Right. Or it's just a tough season, There was a season where we found out our son had some medical things. It wasn't easy. He's fine, but you kind of go through those seasons where it's hard, but you find the strength to get through it instead of getting beat down. It doesn't mean that everything's perfect, but I think that's the thing about the gospel is you have something to hold on to the whole time. So I don't think there's ever been burnout, but what you also added seasons of struggle.
Yeah.
I think the struggle are more external than they are internal. It's just life happening around you that everyone deals with. Would
Okay.
you agree with that? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just life. Sometimes people look at pastors and go, "Oh, I want to be a pastor. Everything's great for you," and you're like, sometimes that's just the side I show you. Sometimes there really is those normal human things we all deal with, and I think that's what we don't try to hide in our church is we don't hide the fact that we're all just walking this journey together.
Okay. And so, how do you stay spiritually strong while going through these tough seasons?
It's the church community for me. Truly,
Okay.
is I don't just serve them. There's times that they're serving me. A good example of that would be last week. I had really bad back pain the last few weeks, and we just let a few people in our church know, and they lifted us up in prayer. They got around us. They helped us set up and tear down, and instead of making my back do it. And that's not a manipulation thing. That's just where it becomes a community that helps you through stuff rather than just individual. You know what I mean? And I think that's why we don't burn out, because we're just very open about what we need. And then I was also taught when it comes to burnout, there was a more senior minister than myself. And he said to me, every year on your calendar, when you get a new calendar, put on it time for you and your wife and time for you and your family before you put anything else on your calendar. And I don't know if we automatically do it first, but that mentality of put your family and yourself first, not everything else. And I think that keeps you from, would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
You just got to kind of prioritize things.
And I think it's something that a lot of people actually do struggle with, especially with nowadays where, people are more focused on their careers and rather than what's more important as in family and their own wellness at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so how do you and your spouse keep each other up spiritually?
We just keep encouraging each other to, I don't know, at least my goal for Brent is to continue to encourage him. We read the Bible together, we pray, but to just, the encouragement I think is a big thing. Like, keep going, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, as a wife, I need to be supporting him that way. And just to be there when, if we need to vent, be a sounding board,
Yeah, all of it. I think it's all of that for both of us.
Yeah.
Because I think the thing to remember is, for a minister, we're not different than you. Like we have a different role. I might not be going and working at a place that works at a factory. I might be going to a church, but it's still the same issues. It's still dealing with life,
people,
and people, and there was a joke, and this can be said for anything. Okay. But my dad was a pastor. Remember how we talked about that?
Yeah.
And I was asking him when I was younger. I said, "Dad, what's it like working with all these different people?" And he goes, "Oh, ministry would be perfect if it wasn't for all the people." And it was a joke because the point of ministry is the people, but there's struggle that comes with that, and it's not even a bad struggle. It's just you're dealing and carrying the weight sometimes of other people's needs, and that's where you have to have that sounding board to be able to let off some of that weight sometimes, because you neglect your own needs because your heart is to serve others. So you got to balance it, and sometimes it takes the other half to remind you of that balance, because you can just start to keep going. And that makes sense how I'm saying that?
That's beautiful.
So, yeah.
So before moving on, is there a Bible verse that each of you use or keep in mind to carry you through tough times? Like, is there something you can quote for me, or something that's important for you?
I think we have the same one, don't we?
Yeah, you can say
You
it.
got it. You want me to do it for you?
You
I
don't
got
have
it.
to do it for me, but yes, you can
We're gonna
say
do it with you?
No, just
Okay.
You can do it together.
Habakkuk 1:5. No, Habakkuk 1:5 says, "Look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed, for I will do something in your day that you would not believe even if you were told." And now it's talking about an uprising and the nation changing and whatever in the verse. But I think it's a verse for us when we've now worked in multiple countries long term, but also even more than that short term. And you just kind of look at nations and go, God hasn't given up on these nations. And we have a part in that. And, we had a mentor when I was growing up, we did together, that always used to say to us, the question isn't if God's going to do the impossible. The question is if you're going to be part of it. And I think that has always driven us to be in line with what God's doing, because God's doing something. If you're not seeing it, it's not because it's not happening. So be in line with where God is. And I think that that's a biblical thing as well, because when you correlate that idea of God's going to do it, the question is if you're going to be part. You go back to Moses, where God says, I'm done, go without me. And Moses' response is, I'm not leaving unless you're with me. And I think when you put that challenge that our mentor gave with that verse with Moses and God, I mean, this was a man who saw miracles and whatever, and he's going, listen, unless you're with me, I'm staying right where I am. So I think the challenge in that with the verse is just stay with where God has you. Don't go ahead of him. Don't be behind him. Stay with him, and he'll bless where you're at.
Yeah. And I want to be a part of something that makes a difference, and I truly believe God has something special for Malta. I believe we will see many people give their hearts to him, and I want to be a part of it. I want to see something awesome happen in Malta for the Maltese, for the internationals. And so, yeah, that verse just is kind of like a cheer you on verse, like, we're going to make it, let's wait and see what happens. And so, yeah.
Let's close with a message to the people, to the listeners, to the people listening to this podcast. Firstly, what would you say to someone who's struggling to find God at the moment?
I think I go back to, there's a verse in the Bible that says, if you seek me, you will find me. God's not hiding from you. He does love you. I mean, and I think that's the first thing. When I talk to people that say, I don't know what God wants, or I don't know where he is, or I don't know how to find him, I think sometimes we do find him, we just don't necessarily like the answer.
Okay.
There's times my son will ask for things or want things, or my daughter, can I have this game or that game, or can I go to a movie with my friends? It's not that I didn't answer him if it was no. He just might not like the answer. And I think that's what I would challenge people with first is, if you seek God, you'll find him. But then be okay with what the answer is. Don't think that because you didn't get the answer you wanted, it wasn't God. And sometimes the answer is wait. Sometimes we want an answer today when really God just wants you to be at peace and just wait. Like we talked about in our callings, just because me and you became believers in our teens or younger doesn't mean I went into missions at 12. There was a waiting period. So It didn't change what God was doing. It just changed when. So I think that's what I would say is, just seek God, ask the hard questions. He's big enough to ask them. He's not scared of the question.
Okay. And how about to someone who's curious, but he's unsure about church?
I'd say just check it out. I mean, there's so many things that you can check out and do on this island. Why not church be one of them? Just give it a try.
Yeah. And I would say we're not going to hurt you or eat you.
I think the biggest thing to remember, though, for any church, and especially ours, is that we're not perfect. We're all human. Yeah. I think that's something, pastors sometimes get put up on a pedestal. People think, oh, you must be extra holy or whatever, but we're not perfect, and if you come and check out our church, we might offend you one day, but just tell us, so we can, we're human, just like we're all doing life together.
And I think that comes across in Paul's teachings, because Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. The same guy who says, follow me as I follow Christ, also said, the things I want to do, I do not do, and the things I do not want to do, I do. And I'm pretty sure he's the patron saint of Malta. So when you have a guy saying, follow me as I follow Christ, and oh, by the way, I'm going to mess up, who then wrote half of the New Testament, I think we're in good company when we admit we're not perfect. But I think us admitting we're not perfect is hopefully something that gives you peace in coming to visit, is we don't assume to be perfect. and we don't assume you will be. That's okay.
Right.
It's
And
okay.
you're not following us. We're saying, hey, run with us as we follow after God. So that's why we would like people to check it out because,
Yeah.
I don't know, especially nowadays. I mean, our world is getting crazier. It seems like there's a lot more chaos. There's a lot more, people are lonely. People are searching for things, and it's like, then check out the church. Because, we're ready to love on you. We're ready to show you a God who will love you unconditionally. There's no reason to sit in your apartment by yourself and be lonely and just focus on social media, TikTok, Instagram. I mean, we all know after scrolling for hours, you can feel pretty empty and go, wow, my life sucks after looking out, what everybody else is doing. Just check it out. It's something different.
And I would add, when you check it out, there's no dress code.
Yeah, there's
People ask me all the time, what do I wear? What do I wear? I always say clothes is a good thing. Just wear clothes. Just come in what you're in. Come in what you're comfortable in. We've got people in our church that have walked in and wore suits. We've had people that walk in
wear
shorts or pajama pants, and we don't care.
Yeah.
If you're there and you need care, you need love, you need acceptance, that's what we'll offer.
It's about your heart.
It's about
not
your
about
heart.
your
Yep.
outward appearance. Yeah.
So you mentioned something interesting earlier. So why do you think that nowadays, with all the changes going on, people need Jesus more than ever in their life?
Because our world is not our home. We're all gonna die one day, and we have a choice to accept Jesus as our Savior or not. And so this world just gets crazy and chaotic. There's a lot of sin in the world. There's a lot of, there's constantly things pulling against you to make you feel alone and that you're by yourself. That's why God sent Jesus into the world to save us, to give us a hope that there's something better out there. You know what I mean? And the world doesn't give us that. And so if you spend your nights at the bar or spend your nights dancing or partying that's not going to, it will maybe bring some enjoyment for the short term, but for the long term, that doesn't fill those holes in your heart. It's about your relationship with Jesus and getting to know him.
And I would say as well that that's what Jesus invites us to do. Yeah. Because what he said in Scripture again is, come to me, all. That's a big word. Not some, not the ones that are perfect, not the ones that are good enough. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened. And when you watch the news, when you watch social media, when you walk outside, you see this weariness and this burden that people are carrying and this tiredness that they have. And that's what we just try to do is, remind people that that's what Jesus said. Come to me if you're tired. Come to me if you're worried. Come to me if you're stressed. Come to me if you're those things. And what I love about the end is he goes, and I will give you rest. Because when you look at it, especially like an island like Malta, everyone, they come from all over the world to do what? To rest, to go on holiday, to go to the beach, to go. Yeah. Imagine having the person of Christ in you that gives you that peace and that rest no matter where you are. And I think that's what we say when we say, why would someone come to church? Rest. To turn everything off for a little bit. Even if it's not necessarily your thing, I promise you in our church, get a coffee, sit in the back. You don't have to stand up at every song. You don't have to sing. You don't have to dress enough. You don't have to know all the words. If you just need a place where you can walk in and sit down, have a coffee and breathe, and then if you get done with that and you want someone to pray for you, we will. If you don't, that's fine. If you want someone to just talk to when you're done. I get picked on all the time because people are like, why don't you help tear down? Or I'm like, I got people to talk to. But that's what we're there for, is if you just want someone to just unload on, that's what we're here for. And God's big enough to take that as well. So that's what I would say. Come try it. Because there's no pressure. It's just relaxed. So.
Okay, interesting. So what do you think, what do you hope that people take as an experience when they come to church? Like what do they take back with them home? Or
I hope they take the experience that there's a place that welcomed them the way they were. Not good enough, the way they were. That there was no judgment there. I hope that's what they get. And I hope that they get what real love is. You know, we have this idea of love that it's physical attraction or it's physical relationship. I'll say it that way. You know what I mean? That's not what love is. Love is actually caring for you even when I get nothing back from you. It's purely just doing what's best for you. So I hope that they take that when they leave is a true love for them.
And it's about a relationship. Our church isn't based on religion. Like, it's not all about rules and, you know, it's about getting a relationship with Jesus Christ, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's one lesson about love that you think ministry has taught you?
That's a good question. I think for me, as you keep doing ministry, my heart just keeps growing for love of people, I guess. You know what I mean? Like, as different people walk through the door, your heart just keeps growing. Because my big prayer is like, God, help me see this person like you would. And you hear what they're going through, or you hear what life is, what's happening, and your heart just, it's like they become part of family. Like, it's another one of my kids, you know what I mean? And you're like, how can I love this person, you know, more than this person that I've known for 10 years? This person just walked in the door. And I think that's what it's shown me, is that with God, He's allowed me to just have this love for people that just continues to grow with no matter who comes through the door, I guess for me is what it is.
Yeah.
Are you able to say that? Same
No,
thing
I would.
for you or no?
But I think I would add the lack of conditions.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so often the world has conditions to get something.
Yeah.
You pay me and then I give you this. Or you do this and you receive that. And I think that's the difference too, is that there is no place in Scripture that Christ says you do something to earn salvation.
It does seem like it's the world we're living in
Yeah.
now, though, the way most people think.
Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to say, is that I think for me, what I've learned through it about love is it's unconditional. And that's a word that I don't think the world fully understands anymore. Is there's no condition for my love. So when you look at Christ saying that, with the Easter season having just gone past and those types of things, you know, he why did he die for us? Because he loved us first, not because we were good enough. In fact, he did that because we aren't good enough. And he still loved us and said, I'm going to take on your punishment for you before you even knew who I was, before you even sinned, before you were even brought into this earth. I've now done everything for you. So I think when we try to love people that way, it doesn't matter if their hair is natural colors or purple. It doesn't matter if they agree with me or not. It doesn't matter if they agree with my politics or my theology or whatever. If it's a place that you feel that you need to be loved and accepted and cared for, that's what we offer you. Now, we're not going to deny what we believe, but you don't have to agree with me to love you. And I think that's the thing I want people to take away, is that love is unconditional. It's not conditional. And the minute you put conditions on love, it's not love. It's manipulation.
Well, and I think there's no judgment too, you know, because all of us are one step away from making a mistake in life. You know what I mean? So sometimes there's people I've run into that say, you know, I can't come to church because I've done this in my life, or, you know, I've sinned really bad. I can't. And it's kind of like, there's no judgment here, because we're all sinners. We all make mistakes, big or small. There's not one that's worse than the other. And it's about love is about the person. So like, Brian, I'm going to love you as my friend, as like a brother. I might, you know, there might be something that God's dealing with you with the sin, but that's not for me to judge. That's for God to work with you. I'm not going to sit here and go, Brian, you need to fix this. God's going to do that. But I get to just love you along the way and be like, you're going to make it. You're going to do it, you know?
If you were to describe God in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
Love, grace. I don't know if it's a word, but I go second chances.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say awesome everlasting and unconditional love.
When was the last time that you truly felt God's presence in your life?
I think the word truly is throwing me off. I feel like he's around all the time. But I would say like when I really felt it was probably in the last prayer meeting we had a couple weeks ago. Like you could just tell. Like there's just times in my life when the way you describe it is you can almost feel like you can cut it with a knife. Like you feel it. So I think that would be the last time for me recently. I mean, multiple times in life, but that.
If you were ever to meet your younger self, what advice would you give to him or her before becoming a missionary?
Learn how to play an instrument for planting a church, because man, Brent and I don't play instruments. So just having someone who knows how to play guitar or piano to lead a song is wonderful, because I can't do that.
Well, at least you can say you can play the radio.
True. I do push that button quite well.
I would say, don't limit yourself, I think is what I would say. And I think I'd repeat that for anyone listening. Just don't put limits on yourself.
Okay.
You know, don't.
When
I'm in Malta, I hear we're from a small island, or we're just stop saying those things to yourself, because you can do anything, truly anything.
And where's this stemming off from? So do you think that you have any regrets, or?
I was when I was growing up, I had learning disabilities. Had ADD, had possibly ADHD, had grades weren't great. I mean, those kinds of things. And it just kind of creates a mindset that you can't do something. And what I've learned as I've gotten older, hence the question, what would you tell your younger self? Don't use those limits. Don't even repeat them. Don't use them. Just because you have maybe a disability, or maybe
or something happened
a
in
struggle,
life,
or something happened in life, whatever, it doesn't mean it limits you in the future. So don't hold on to those things. Just stop using any limiting terms in your life, is what I would tell myself.
Okay. And for the next question, I'm gonna put a bit of a challenge for you.
Yeah.
So in just one sentence, what would you say to Malta? If you were to say something to Malta in just one sentence, what would it be?
The hard part's the one sentence.
Putting a bit of a challenge there for you.
My one sentence would be breathe.
That's a word, though.
I know, but it's still the whole sentence. Because you live in such a beautiful area, but there's a lack of patience. Just breathe. Look around you more often. Know what you have. Because when you lose patience, you lose peace.
Makes
So I
sense.
wouldn't say a sentence. I'd say a word. Breathe. Just breathe.
You exceeded my expectations there. I didn't
But I had
know.
explanation. So
Yeah, you kind of cheated there, but
I did.
We'll let that slide. Okay, so if anyone wanted to contact the church, is there a way they can do that? So
there's a link below that you'll be able to click on, and that will connect you directly to one of our leaders that will contact you. And you can do that through email, Facebook, WhatsApp, phone, whatever. You'll be able to put your information in there, and any of us will contact you as fast as we can. We normally have a turnaround of under 24 hours. Sometimes it's within minutes, but normally it's within 24 hours that we get a response. So click that link. And if you have any questions or want to know more about what's going on, you can talk directly to one of our leaders.